Okay, first of all, tell me your name.
Ray Parsons,
Ray, and where was you born, Ray?
Harbour Grace, Newfoundland.
And when did you come to Maine or United States?
I came over with my mother and older sister and my father in 1935. I can tell you a little more history about that, but probably not pertinent to. You see, at that time, things were kind of tough in Newfoundland.
Sure.
Started
I
work.
think they were tough everywhere then, right?
Yeah. And my father came over here in 25, the year I was born, and he worked here during the construction season and then came home for 2 or 3 months every winter. But when he got enough money together to move us over, he brought my mother and my older sister and I over here.
And here was Bangor Brewer?
Brewer.
In Brewer, Maine?
Yeah.
So you went to school some of your later years
yeah.
in Brewer?
I went to school in Brewer. I skipped the first grade. My sister, I think, skipped a couple of grades because she graduated, she just turned 16 when she graduated. So the schools were different.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that they were ahead of this country, but they were probably a little more concentrated over there than they were here.
Yeah. Can you tell me about your early war year, or not the war years, but when the war was gearing up and things were happening in Germany and Japan? How were you involved? And
Well, as I say, I was working while going to high school in a grocery store across the street from the high school. And I remember Dow Field when it was being built, from what I told you earlier, from a grass strip. And I can still see the first squadron of P-38s that came in here. I think about 16 of them. That was quite a thrill for this area at that time.
right, and that was Dow Air, and then it turned into Dow Air Force Base.
That's right.
In Bangor.
Yeah.
So when did you actually join the military, or you mentioned you were in the reserves in the early years?
Okay, I joined the State Guard, and then I joined the Navy on January 7th, 1943, due to the fact that the principal of the high school called us young fellows who were going to turn 18 before we graduated into his office, and he said, if you have a choice of something you want, you better sign up because you will be taken into the infantry.
You'll be drafted when you're 18.
Yeah. So that's why I left school at 3.5 years. Having been in the State Guard, I didn't go to boot camp, went down to Boston, Mass, and they reassigned me to Rockland, Maine. They were building an airport down there.
Yep.
There was 14 of us came up, and we lived in a farmhouse down at Rockland while they were building the airport. We were there for almost a year while things progressed, and they moved Marines in to take over the guard duty, which we were doing, and we were also training British pilots down there for dummy deck landings.
Right.
They came over from Great Britain, and they stayed at Brunswick. That was a Maine station at that time. And they would come over during the day and practice deck landings. They had the flagger there that would drop them in, and they used course airplanes, gull wing.
Right,
Yeah.
sure.
And I don't know how they do it today, but back then we used to have to climb up on the wing and open a little compartment, and it had like a shotgun shell you put in that breech, close the compartment, then the pilot would fire that, and that would start the engine.
Oh, I see, yeah.
So it came along, and the Navy had a program called V-12. I don't know if they still have it or not. So I was interested in the program, but you had to have a high school diploma to get into the program. So I was home one weekend, and I went up to see the principal, and he said, let me check. And he checked my records. He said, gee, I can give it to you because you've got 16 and a half credits, and you only need 16.
Uh-huh.
Well, strange. I went back that Sunday night, and the young fellow on duty said, you get your gear together, you're shipping out tomorrow.
Ooh, okay.
So that's when I started my overseas thing.
So when you shipped out, can you describe that process?
Okay, we went the first day, we went from Rockland to Brunswick, stayed there overnight, and then we went to Boston, the Fargo building in Boston. I don't know, they still have that?
I don't know.
Oh, it's a receiving station,
Right.
is what it was.
Yeah.
We stayed there overnight, then got on a troops train and crossed the country. And as I told you, I don't know if you got this, but about going across in boxcars, bunks put into boxcars. Took us 5 days. We landed at Shoemaker, California. That was another receiving station. Stayed there about 3 weeks, and then we were on another draft for Hawaii. And we took the Franklin Bell from Treasure Island to Hawaii. And was there in Hawaii a while at a receiving station. Then they assigned me to an LST 126. And it was in dry dock at the time, scraping paint and
Right.
doing the,
Now, that was in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii.
yeah.
Now, did you get a chance to see the damage from the 1941 attack? while you were
Well,
there,
only what was around the harbor, not, you know, not anything profound because they had cleaned up a lot of it at that time.
Right.
So, okay, we were there. Very short time on the LST, and the Navy guy came down and he said, well, you fellas, you and you know, you've been in the Navy, you know how they do it, if they're still doing it the same way. We got you, you're on another draft
Right.
for Midway. Got a gear together and got another troop transport and headed to Midway. And I don't know if you've ever been to Midway,
I have
but
not.
you better get some dark glasses when you pull in through there because the white sand,
Yeah.
it's very bright and so forth. Then we got to Midway, and the skipper told us we were going to be there a year. And Midway has 2 islands, you know, Sand Island and Eastern Island. Eastern Island, the planes fly off. That's
Okay,
the
yeah.
where the runway is. And it also has a lagoon. We go in through, you know, a reef and then into the lagoon, which is a beautiful place to anchor ships and so forth. So I worked in the radio shack for a while, not really happy about thinking about being on that rock for 12 months. So it was, well, a submarine rescue I told you I was on
Right.
needed a couple of men, and I was standing in the chow line one day, and one of the fellows says, why don't you go aboard ship with me tonight, this afternoon? And I said, sure, I'll go. I thought he was just fooling. And he says, yeah, the guy that was assigned to go has a broken arm and he can't go. I said, well, I'll go down and talk to the first lieutenant. I went down and he's, sure, you can go. So that was my first experience getting the ship.
And that was a submarine rescue ship?
Yeah,
What was the name of that ship?
Greenlit, ASR-10. And so we operated out of Midway there, and well, what we did was mostly train with the subs, and we did a little bit of you know, reconnaissance work with having Japanese submarines. We carried depth charges
Right.
and all 9 yards.
And what was your rating on the ship?
I got to be a gunner's mate and a deep sea diver.
Oh, no kidding.
We had quite a few deep sea divers on
Uh-huh.
there. 'Cause we had decompression chambers.
And that was for rescue?
Yeah, for diving bell, we had
Yeah.
diving bell and all right up to date diving equipment for that
Wow.
time. I mean, there was no scuba or anything
Right.
like that because they didn't have anything like that. So during the operation there, one day we were operating outside of Midway, quite a ways out, and we had some torpedoes on deck that had to move, and one got loose and came down and caught me in my left leg. It got up against a bit. So I ended up in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Infection set in. I spent 47 days in the hospital
Yep. And where was that? Where was the hospital at? Right.
at Midway.
Right in Midway. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a cable station hospital which was above ground, and they had another one after the infection set in. They sent me down where they had underground, and they also had the radio shack I worked in was underground, because they were expecting the Japs to come back at any time. In fact, every man there had a rifle hanging on his bunk with 100
Sure.
rounds of ammunition, because they say they expect them to come back. So after I got out of the hospital, shortly thereafter, Guam was invaded.
Mm-hmm.
So after they secured Guam, we moved down there and operated out of Guam. Much the same procedure as what we were doing up there.
So did you cycle in and out, like go out for a week or a few days or whatever, and then
Yeah.
come back in? And
Yeah, that's the way we did it.
Mm-hmm.
Then on August 15th, I believe it was, when they were debating about whether they were going to surrender or not, Japan.
Right.
Then they decided to surrender. I can remember that day too. It was late in the afternoon. We heard about it, and all of a sudden, hey, we're going to got to have a work party because we're going to load stores on. And of course, we didn't know. You know, the guys down in the hold didn't know just exactly what was going on.
sure.
Went alongside the tender and loaded up the stores, and we headed for Japan with a convoy.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I put my feet on the soil in Japan was the 28th of August,
1945.
45.
Yes.
Yeah. We went, I forget what harbor it was, Sagami Wan, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we landed there, went in, and it was where they had the biological department, I think, the University of Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
So we accumulated a few things while we were there. And got some guns to bring back for the guys and so forth.
Right.
And then the next day we moved over into Tokyo Bay, and we did a few jaunts from, in the meantime, the surrender was signed on September 2nd.
And you were close by when that happened?
Yes, close enough, so they gave me a certificate saying I was present at the signing of the surrender,
Mm-hmm.
which the certificate is here in the case.
Yep.
Then we made several trips while in Japan to take periscopes off subs or guns off subs that they had there. A lot of people may not know the Japs had, you heard of the kamikaze planes.
Yes. Yep.
They also had one-man submarines,
Mhm.
or a torpedo with a conning tower in.
And somebody in it to steer it.
Yeah, you put man in to steer it. He steers it into the ship, and of course he goes with the ship.
Sure.
In fact, I got a picture in there of a group of these subs. We did some salvage work there, and then our next duty we moved. And you remember me telling you about the airplane carrying subs?
Yes, you were talking about
Yeah.
a Japanese sub that actually carried an airplane.
Yeah, we took two of them, escorted them over to the western part of the island to Sasebo, Sasebo, and we operated out of there for a little while. That is 23 miles from Nagasaki,
Mm-hmm.
where the other bomb was
Yep.
dropped.
Did you get to visit Nagasaki?
I did not the town itself,
Right.
but I was there in the area, and I got a picture of it,
Mm-hmm.
which was pretty well devastated at the time.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah, you mentioned when you were on Midway in Guam that you were there was no enemy activity on the islands at that time.
No.
But when you were at sea, there must have been a lot of concern about Japanese subs and Japanese ships.
Yes, yeah.
What were some of the things, I mean, it must have been tough sailing at night on a ship and not knowing if you're going to be torpedoed or...
Well, I don't know. When you're young,